2 months, 2 units of 6 months, the same battle. Now, in the battle, what happens is that instead of Tammuz, Av, and Elul being Resh, Shin, Ayin for Russia, which means Esav's stamp is on those 3 months, Yaakov succeeds in uprooting the Ayin of Elul completely and placing it square in the middle of the Resh and the Shin and making Shar. Transforms the month of Elul into a Shar, into a gateway. Similarly, Moshe Rabbeinu destroys the double effect of both Bilam and Balak, unwittingly, not knowingly, because he was the counterbalance, of course, to Bilam, Moshe was, but also of Sichon and Og. Now, let's go one step further. Every month, every tribe is assigned a month. Okay? Who is the month of Elul? God. God. What is God known for, by the way? God, Gedud Yegudenu. There's a name for that in English when you have syllogisms. What? Onomatopoeia, yes. Things that sound the same. God, Gedud Yegudenu. Right? Maybe that's because he's breaking the shin of Shemiah. Shemiah goes to Kedusha, right? Ba God. Ba God means Ba Mazal. It's Mazal. It's a good time. You know why it's a good time? So the Gemara in Shabbos says, mystically, Gimel Daled represents Gomel Dolim. Hashem, the Indian of tzedakah, that someone who has what to give, gives to the poor. When we are showing ourselves to Hashem in Elul, we say we're coming Kedalim Ukirashim. Kirashim, right? Reish Shins. We're Reish Shins. We're coming out of Tammuz and we're coming out of Av. And we're here now in Elul and we're trying to recoup our Koach HaTfilah. That's why we build a shofar starting the first day. And the ladies should hear the shofar. My wife says, blow shofar for me every day of Elul. You know, it's hard for ladies to hear shofar because they don't go to the minyan in the morning. So where are they going to hear a shofar from? Okay, so yeah. I need to ask for the shofar. Wake up the Koach HaTfilah. Kol Yaakov. Okay, now it's going to bring us to Yericho in a second. Don't forget Yericho. So says the Bnei Sasvar, that's what happened. The Russia became a Shar. That's the first thing. But he says also the letter Gimel Daled, which stands for the God. God is the army, right? God, Gedud Yidenu. The battle, which is only done through what? Tefillah. How was Yericho conquered by Yehoshua? Through shofar. What does it show? It shows that the way we're going to do battle, the Olam Ha'asiyah, which is Eretz Yisrael, you got to get things done, which is not so simple in Eretz Yisrael, as we all know. Getting anything done is a battle. And we're such good daveners in Chutz La'aretz, but how good is our davening when we live here? Very different to come as a visitor and go cry your heart out at Kever Rachel or the Kotel. Yeah, because that's the one time in 3 years that you've been there. But what if it's there every single day? And can you then make your tefillos count? Or are you befuddled in the Olam Ha'asiyah and lost in the battle with the Yaacov and Esav battle for the day? You know? And therefore, strange thing happened, Meshech Chochmah says, and we learned about this together. Normally, a war to conquer Eretz Yisrael, even when it comes to the 7 nations, you keep the money. The money is yours. The battle of Esav and Yaakov always centers around money. Why? Think about it. Yaakov has to give away all of his wealth just to mollify Esav. And even then, there was this battle between him and the Malach in which what was affected? Yaakov's ability to stand, his bottom half, right? And Chazal tell us, a person's wealth stands them on their feet. And that's why it created a huge problem for Jews throughout history that their parnasa would always be challenged. It would be hard to establish a Torah community with Torah institutions, which are very, very costly and require enormous amount of funds. And it's not a given. A guy wakes up in the morning, sends his kid to free public school, blah, blah, blah. A Jew first has to go into the non-Jewish world, battle, establish themselves, and then gather together. Then they have to have peace with each other. And then they have to build something together. And then it's enormous. It's enormous, the task. It's just enormous. So we are always, our challenge is, where are the resources going to come from for the yeshivas and the kollels and for the batei knesios and for the poor Jewish families, the dalim and the rashim and the community tzedakos and all of the meshulachim? This is what Esav did to us. Now, being in Eretz Yisrael is a correction of that, you should know. It's a correction, because now we're supposed to have really massive resources, and Baruch Hashem, we do see it happening. It hasn't yet been directed, how shall I say, in a Yaacov Dick sense, but there's a lot that is being directed positively. There's a lot that is being supported. And we're not quite there. The battle goes on. But that's where we have to turn the cherev from a cherev of Rishayim to the cherev pipiyot. You know the pasuk? Cherev pipiyot biyadam. You know what that's a reference to? Which sword? The sword of the bris milah. Says Rav Wolfson, based on the Svarim Kedoshim, the Jewish people never used a blade for milah. A double, any you go to bris milah, you'll see it's a double-edged knife. Cherev pipiyot biyado. Pipiyot are two mouths, right? That's another thing about bris milah, but we won't go into that. That's why there's mitzitza b'peh. But that's on a mystical level, right? Halachically and medically, we got problems with that. But cherev pipiyot biyado. That's the slaying of Goliath. Because Orpah, when she went back, she didn't just take a husband and have a child. What did she do? She defiled herself and she debased herself in front of all the men. And some say even a kelev. Which is why Goliath says to David, right here in Emek Allah, about 10 minutes from here, he says, "Why you coming at me? You think I'm a dog that you're going to fight me with a stone? You throw a stone at a dog. But you're going to throw, I'm a dog? Yeah, you're a dog." In a sense that she acted in a way which was not human, not dignified. And she defiled herself. She allowed herself to be defiled. What? By all these, by the entire population. Like a Kadesha, like I won't go into it. Yeah. So out of that detestable act of sinking back into the depths of Moab, Memtet, Rus goes all the way to the top of the Memtet, and she produces David HaMelech. Orpah, who had a chance, goes down to the bottom of Memtet, and she produces Goliath, a giant of a person. When David kills Goliath with his stone, he takes Goliath's sword and cuts off his head. This is like an act of bris milah. And from that point forward, the Jewish people used a double-edged knife for bris milah. Whereas up until that point, they used sharpened stones. When Yeshua gives a bris milah to the Jewish people, he uses a tzur, he uses a flint rock, which is very sharp and can cut. But after that battle, we introduced the bris milah through cherev pipiyot, because David HaMelech is the one who is able to combine tefillah and milchama. So what did he get when he went to the Kohanim of Nov? They gave him bread and they gave him the sword of Goliath back. Because lechem is the milchama, but he says, this is your milchama. It's the milchama of kedusha. It's the milchama of os bris kodesh. You're going to fight, but not like a Russia who's there to satisfy his urges, but to dedicate the money for kedusha. Which is why, by the way, in the battle for Yericho, which is the gateway to Eretz Yisrael, and you know what was the first thing they gave to Arafat, Yamach Shemo? they gave him Yericho. You know what they made out of it? And how long did that last? Until one day, it got blown up. And as far as I know, it still is. But it was just a detestable scene of corruption and theft and nebuch. Lots of Jews went over there to blow their money. Plenty of payas. Lost their ma'os in the casino of Yericho until they, thank God, it was shut down. Because Eretz Yisrael and Yericho has to have mamon de kedusha. What Esav put as a wound is that we don't have the proper resources for kedusha. The resources go to rishus and are wasted and are not available or are misused or misappropriated. And kedusha needs the money, and it's getting it. It's coming back because we're back in the right place, but it's still a process. So giving Yericho to them was such a step backwards, and it represented a corruption of money. But when Yeshua battled Yericho, no one was allowed to take any money for themselves, which is not the typical rule of Milchemes Sheva Amamim. It's not the halacha. You look in the Rambam, if you're battling one of the 7 nations, and they don't want to do tshuva, and they don't want to have kedusha, they want to stay in the way of the Plishtim, and they don't want to stay in the way of the Jews, what they do is, you take the money for yourself. Yeshua says, no. This is the gateway to Eretz Yisrael. This is our first war. I'm going to establish the purpose of our war. It's going to be through a shofar, through tefillah, and we're going to allocate the resources only for kedusha. Now you understand why the poor guy Achan, who took for himself, one shmata and a couple of, why they had to stone him and kill him. And what's so terrible? Like, give him a misdemeanor, give him a 30 days in jail, What do you want from the guy? No, don't you understand that the whole point was, this is exactly what we're here to avoid. It's exactly that's exactly Esav, that's exactly the problem. Esav says, Yeshli Rav, I have tons, but I always want more. And Yaacov says, Yeshli Kol. Kol is the bracha from Hashem. Kol represents 50. We've gone above Moab, above the 49th level. We're now on the level of Mamon Dikeh Dusha. Yeshli Kol. I got it together. Therapy Pios Biyada.
Why did you say that kind of said it like this?
Well, what does Rosh Tevis Elul stand for, among other things? Anil Dodi Dodi Li. Mol Hashem should circumcise what? Es levavcha, ve'es levav zarecha. Circumcise your heart. So when you have a rasha, that's a person of an uncircumcised heart. Essentially, the Rambam says it means that you're carrying resentment, anger, and bad feelings towards other people. Because he uses it in the halacha of forgiving somebody. You have to ask mechila for people that you've done wrong. But what about the guy who you're asking mechila for? Are they obligated to forgive you? Yes. They're obligated to forgive you. It's a mitzvah to forgive, and to forgive with a full heart. It brings from who? From Avram Avinu, the first liberator of the months. It says Avram davened for Elimelech, for Avimelech, right? Vayispalel Hashem al Avimelech, Vayirpa Hashem as Avimelech. He gave him refuah shlema. He didn't say to him, I hate you because of what you did to my wife, or what you wanted to do to my wife. So therefore, that is the bottom line. We cannot carry within our hearts what is the Russia? The Russia is angry, resentful, fearful, hateful. Those negative emotions run rampant. Think about Haman. He had everything, but in his emotional state, he hated Mordecai so much that it led to his demise. So when you have Mol Hashem es levavcha, a circumcised heart means you're ridding yourself of that negativity. That's why I say cutting off the head of Goliath is the thinking of the Rosh Goliath. You cut it off, get rid of it. It represents an orla. It represents an orla that we need to remove, a barrier, just like we're speaking about barrier. So this brings us full circle. The last Rosh Tevos of Elul, one of the ones that we say, is from Purim. We say Ish Lirehu umatanos le'evyonim. That's the idea of gomel dalim. Be kind to others. Why? So this is what Bnei Yissaschar says. We come to Hashem, we say, listen Hashem, we are Reish Shin, we're Rashim. We do not have mitzvos, we do not have schuyos, we do not have much going for us. Kedalim u'kurashim. Inside the Rash, put an ayin for Shari Tefillah. Inside the God, no, not inside the God, inside hold on. Inside the eighth, I want you to put an ayin and a taf. An ayin and a taf. The letter taf represents Elul as well. The Bnei Yissaschar represents, because it's the permutation of the name Hashem that corresponds to Elul. Okay. So ayin we used, and the taf we're also going to use. How we're going to use the taf? We're going to say dalim and rashim. We're not going to be dalim anymore. We're not going to be poor anymore. Okay? But rather, Hashem, here, I'll show you this. This is a beautiful thing he says. Is the letter tes, tough, I'm going to read it to you, because it's a beautiful idea. Right. It says, okay. Vayischanan ela Hashem be'esahi lemor. Okay? So, Moshe davens at that time, at the time that he battled Sichon and Og, which is Elul, right? It means that he battled to open up those gateways, to break down the doors of Tefillah, okay? And therefore, okay. So he says that the dal becomes a delet. Delet. Now listen, this is the final point. It says V'eschanan, which we always start reading it, right? When do we read V'eschanan? The week of Tu B'Av. The week where we begin the tearing away that Yaakov did from Esav. It says V'eschanan el Hashem ba'esahi, ayin taf. I davened at that time, which was starting with Tu B'Av. I want to break down the resistance. So he says, you know what it stands for? We go from dal to delet. As it says, dafaknu de la secha. We're knocking at your door. We're at the delet. We tell Hashem, we're knocking at the door. Open the dalsei tshuva. That's why we speak about, Ni'ilas HaSha'arim is the end of the process of Yom Kippur, the end of the 40 days of davening. What happens? The gates close, because the beginning of Elul, it represents the opening of the Shar, the opening of the Delis. Now, how do you do that? The main way to do it is to get rid of the Orlas Halev. We have to work on ridding ourselves of anger, resentment, jealousy, bad feelings, and focusing only on Asiya. I read a very interesting book recently, and basically, that's what the book says. The book says like this: successful people focus on two things only. Unsuccessful people focus on everything that's wrong. Everything that's not right, and why it's not right, and why it's no good, and how it's no good, and how terrible it feels that it's no good. But a successful person, he says, thinks about what they want to do and how they're going to do it. Asiya. So that's really the key to Elul. Leave everything else behind and just focus on your goal. What do I want to do, and how am I going to do it? And as Hashem using that, we should recognize our koach as in our cherev pipiot, to remove the orlas halev, but we have help behind us. Our avos hagedoshim, Moshe Rabbeinu paved that path to lift us up from Moab, the Memtes Shari Tuma, Ba'es Hahi. And Bezos Hashem, we have our work cut out for us, but our battle is here. And I'll just leave that point, as I think that's one of the big challenges of Eretz Yisrael, is the finances of Eretz Yisrael. I can tell you that firsthand. And how expensive it is to establish oneself in Eretz Yisrael, to keep oneself in Eretz Yisrael. But that's part of this. I really believe it's a spiritual battle, and we have to look at the bigger picture and say it is being handled. The wealth is on its way. It's moving from the hands of Golus. It's leaving that, and it's returning to the place of Kedusha, and it will eventually return to Yerushalayim, which is the source of wealth for the entire world, like it was at the time of Shlomo Melech. But we have to be patient. It's a bigger process than any individual. You know, we individuals may get knocked around a little bit, but as begadol, as they say in Israel, it's happening. So we just have to hold on and use our tefillos that we should see this continuous breakthrough. Be'ezrat Hashem.
This is the biggest reason that people don't come to